Hieronymus's terse reply comes a few hours later. Tori, are you sure you know what you saw? Potsdam has already involved herself too much in our personal affairs, and I have absolutely no desire to rebuild any ties with her or that wretched school. Regardless, I notified my father of your message. He will send a trusted confidant to the school in order to evaluate the situation himself. Fortunately, he seems to be a brother of one of your peers, which will make the visit seem more like a social call and less like an investigation. Please do not get more involved with this than you already have been. Although the subject needs no reminder, please remember that she wiped my memories after she tricked us into a marriage contract that should never have occurred. That is not to say I regret our relationship, Tori, but it was a means to get me into the position I now hold, one that I am already immensely regretting. I will see you soon for Thanksgiving. Until then, try to stay out of trouble. H. I set the letter down on the desk and then pushed my chair back, crossing my arms over my chest. True, Potsdam had tricked us both into the marriage contract, but our relationship would not have existed without it. I had been a student, and he had been a teacher, my teacher. Even if we had feelings for each other, he was too proper to ever let anything ever come of it. There was always the chance that one of us would have acted on our feelings after I had graduated, but considering the almost 14-year age gap between us, he probably still would have been reticent to even consider me as a romantic partner. But calling Iris Academy a wretched school? Virginia had said that she had heard rumors that he had been back there, but why? What else had happened between him and Potsdam that he wouldn't even want me to help her find her long-lost daughter? In either case, it was pretty much done and over with now. I was tasked with finding a girl with marks on her stomach, and I had found her. If it wasn't Potsdam's daughter, then that was that. And if it was Potsdam's daughter, well, that was still that. I'd miss Becky, but she'd probably have a better life with Potsdam than with Miss Minchin. I don't reach out to Hieronymus, and he doesn't reach out to me. I had gotten a long letter from Virginia telling me all about the Apple Festival, and one from Bedge complaining to me about a boy that he didn't like at his new school, but I don't respond to either of them just yet. I knew it wouldn't help to sulk over what Hieronymus had said, but I couldn't help myself. Part of me was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to suddenly decide he really didn't want to be with me anymore, and the distance only made things harder to determine how he really felt about me, even despite his earlier romantic letter. A little over a week goes by before I walk down the stairs to see all the girls whispering excitedly to one another. At first I think it might be in response to something Miss Minchin has planned, but that's when I notice a tall man with dark hair standing in the entranceway, talking to Lavinia and Jessie. As soon as Lavinia sees me coming down the staircase, she immediately huffs and rolls her eyes, and he turns to look at me. His eyes are the most piercing blue that I've ever seen in my entire life, and I almost feel off balance for a second as I try to make a grab for the railing look unaffected as possible. I quickly make my way down the stairs and join them, keenly aware that my throat was tightening up and that my face might be getting redder by the second. His stare was penetrating, but it was warm, and I almost couldn't help but feel as though he was looking straight through me. A pleasure to meet you, I say as I perform a small curtsy. I am Lady Tori Brown-Grabiner. Pleased to make your acquaintance. It's nice to meet you, Lady Grabiner, he says, bowing slightly as he takes my hand and kisses the backs of my knuckles. I am Tobin Herbert, Earl of Hackney, but please, just call me Tobin. And you can just call me Tori, I say, suddenly coming back to myself as I put two and two together for myself. Wait, are you Lavinia's brother? Unfortunately, Lavinia scoffs. Why are you here, anyway? I thought you were off tending to business in Lansing or something. Must I need a reason to pay my baby sister a visit? He teases, and she just groans as she rolls her eyes. But I can see that you have studies to attend to. I was going to take a walk of London. His eyes drift over to me. Lady Grabiner, do you mind being my guide? I'm blushing, but I hope it's not as obvious as it feels. Only if you call me Tori, I reply, and he smiles as he offers me his arm. I can go too, Jessie says, eagerly grabbing his other arm, but Lavinia slaps her hand away. No, she scolds. No, I need you here with me. She looks back up at her brother. But sure, you go off and flirt with a married woman. I can only wonder what the proper English gentleman will say about that. If I meet any, I'll be sure to ask them, he replies, and Lavinia's face flushes with anger as she opens the door and leads us inside. As soon as he shuts the door behind us, I can't help myself. I have to ask, has she always had such a temper, or is that just an act that she puts on to keep others from getting too close? A very astute observation, he says with a smile as we turn out onto the street. But I'm not here to talk about Lavinia, thankfully. Aloysius tells me that you have found the girl that Potsdam has been searching for. Straight to business, then. I have, but she's not a student. Oh? Then who is she? A servant girl, I reply, and he raises an eyebrow. I made a mark on my arm similar to the one that Hieronymous had described and asked the other girls about it. Ermengarde didn't recognize it, but when I went back to my room, one of the maids saw it and showed me a mark on her stomach. I don't know how to find out if it's definitely her, but it might be. There are definitely ways to find that out, he replies. Magic tests, I ask? Like matching their spell signatures or something? He raises an eyebrow at me. I'm sure they could find someone to perform a DNA test if Petunia wants one, he answers with a small laugh. And I had heard you were raised as a wild seed. In America, of all places. I was, I insist, but I've also had it drilled into me so many times that magic and science don't mix that I figured they probably had other ways of finding that out. If they do, I don't know about it, he says with a shake of his head. Then again, I'll admit that I don't know all that much. I was raised in a pretty conservative environment. I've been to America only a handful of times, but I could tell that it is very different from how things are here. Very different, I echo. I get to wear pants there, at least. He chuckles again. So how are you enjoying London? The weather is probably insufferable compared to what you must be used to. It does rain a lot here, I admit, but I was previously enrolled in Iris Academy, which is located in Vermont. It's a state in the Northeast. We get a lot of brutal winters up there, with freezing temperatures and several feet of snow that make it difficult to go outside. I heard you don't get snow like that in London. No, it usually just rains, he agrees. So, how are you getting on with my sister? She can be a handful. I apologize for that. She doesn't really seem to get along with anyone, I say with a shrug. She's always seemed so distant and aloof, but she seems worse lately. Did something happen? Yes and no, he says with a sigh. Lavinia recently discovered that she was born out of an affair. You must understand that things work very differently in the magical community. After my mother gave birth to me, my parents learned that she could never again bear children. If anything happened to me, they would be left without an heir. My father had affairs with multiple women in order to try to conceive another heir, and thus Lavinia was born. She only discovered her true parentage relatively recently, and, while she understands why it was necessary, she is, as you can imagine, quite frustrated by the deception. I'm quiet for a moment as I take this in. I felt a bit sorry for Lavinia, yes, but I couldn't help but feel even more sorry for her mother. And how did your mother take to that arrangement? She understood it needed to be done, he says simply. It is extremely common in noble families to have as many heirs as necessary to carry on the family line. I know you may not understand it now, Tori, but it's the way things are done in noble families. I don't honestly know what to say to that, and so I just changed the subject back to Lavinia. I can understand why she would be upset about that, but she's been a bit of a bully to me ever since I arrived. He nods and considers this for a moment. Lavinia always wants to be at the center of attention, and since you're here, I'm guessing Miss Minchin has taken to praising you over her. I can't help but nod. Exactly that. Our parents don't have the best standing in the magical community, he says slowly, as if he's hesitant to admit it. I've been working hard to try to improve my family name. Aloysius has taken me under his wing, if you will, to try to help my standing. He said befriending you as the wife of his son could only help my social standing. I don't know about that, I admit with a shake of my head. Aloysius is the one with all the notoriety. Hieronymous is overshadowed by rumors from his past, and I'm just a Wildsea girl who knows next to nothing about the noble role she is now being asked to play. I pause for a moment as I look over at him. What do you know of our relationship? From what Aloysius has told me, or from what I've heard from the magical circles, he asks. Both, I say immediately. Well, rumors spread that you were a student under the special tutelage of Lord Grabiner back when he was still teaching at Iris Academy. One day, an experiment went horribly wrong and both of your lives were placed in mortal peril. His menace appeared to save his life, and he wed you in order to extend his family protections to yours and spare your life as well. Ah, I say. Well, that definitely put a more romantic spin on it, at the very least. What did Aloysius say? That you were in love, he replies simply, but that your wedding was a small, private affair due to the American taboo of your age disparity. Although age has very little meaning in the magical community and noble families, apparently Americans are rigid against that sort of thing. To some extent, I reply with a shrug, but what you heard is true. He pauses. Which version? Both versions, I reply. They don't technically negate each other, do they? No, I suppose not, he replies thoughtfully. Does he treat you well, at least? Impeccably, I respond without missing a beat. Because if you know about that, I'm guessing that you also know about why it took him so long to take up his father's seat. Everyone does, he replies. It's practically worked its way into legend, at least among noble families. It makes for a great cautionary tale. Accept your lot in life. Obey the rules. Don't drag incompetent wild seeds into the other world thinking that you're strong enough to protect them. I still don't like how even the mention of Hieronymus's name was still tied up with Violet, but maybe once more people came to know me, I could alleviate that. I don't know about that, I mentioned casually. I'm sure you've heard the story about the time Hieronymus and I dueled a demon prince from the other world that was trying to take our lives. What? He asks, and his interest is genuine as he turns to me. I did not hear about that. It's true, I say. Hieronymus and I have been on many adventures together, but from what I've gathered here, it's not a story proper English ladies are allowed to tell. Tobin just laughs as he shakes his head. Despite what I can only imagine you're being told, Tori, I don't think you have to worry about fitting in. No one has really met you to say for sure, but Aloysius has been telling stories of the feisty blue-haired vixen that captured his son's heart. Oh, I ask, unable to suppress a laugh. And do I live up to whatever standards Aloysius is setting for me? You've surpassed them, he replies. Your hair is bluer than the deepest oceans, and your beauty isn't anything words could ever do justice to. I can't help but blush. Didn't Lavinia warn you about flirting with a married woman? Is it a flirtation, he asks, or an honest declaration? I have absolutely no idea how to answer that. I remember when Damien had flirted with me my freshman year. I didn't even really know that I was flirting at the time. I just knew that he was trying to compliment me in his own way, but everything he said just made me feel uncomfortable. Like we both knew he shouldn't be saying it, and yet Here he was, trying to guide me down the road of terrible decisions. If that is a compliment, then I thank you for it. It's the safest thing I can think of to say. Now, I think you should return me to Miss Minchin's. I have my own studies to attend to. He just nods in my direction. As you wish, Lady Grabiner.